Welcome, beautiful souls, to the Conscious Tarot series. My name is Danny, and I'm a tarot reader, astrologer, and spiritual guide. This series isn't about fortune telling or using the cards for divination, but rather it's about using the cards for soul remembrance, for even awakening to who we truly are. The tarot, or the way that I like to use the tarot, is a tool that we can use to see our patterns, particularly our unconscious patterns, but also to see our potentials and even our spiritual lessons that are unfolding in our lives. And we're going to begin where every journey begins, and that is with the Fool. The Fool is the beginning of the Major Arcana series of the tarot, and it can also symbolize the end, because every beginning is an ending, and we're going to discuss that in today's episode. But before we get into it, I'd love to invite you to download your free copy of the Conscious Tarot Workbook, which includes cheat sheets for all 78 tarot cards, as well as journal prompts to help you go deeper and to really learn more about who you are with the reflection of the tarot cards. So as I mentioned before, the Fool represents new beginnings, pure potential, innocence, and he really invites us to take a leap of faith, to trust in the unknown, to trust in the impossible, to trust in the unlimited potential of the unknown, and to really lead from our hearts, from that wisdom, that deep inner knowing that this is my destiny, this is my truth, and I'm going to follow that North Star, even if it seems foolish to most. Now, the Fool is often seen as the most powerful card of all the Major Arcana, which is made up of 22 cards in total. And the reason for that is because the Fool is seen as the seed where all creation manifests from. In esoteric traditions, the Fool represents the unmanifest, which is the infinite potential before all of creation. So a way that you could understand it is the Fool is the breath before the word is spoken. It is the silence before there is sound. It is the pure consciousness before there is form. So he really invites us to believe in the possibility of infinite potential, to really return to children where we have this idealistic and optimistic mind most of the time. I love when you ask a child, what do you want to do when you grow up? And a child will simply respond, I want to be a singer, I want to be an astronaut. There's no limitations to what that child believes is possible. And there's an essence of the childlike wonder and curiosity and optimism within the Fool. And I really believe the Fool is inviting us to return to that childlike state. As Jesus said in the Bible, unless you turn and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Matthew 18:3. What Jesus was talking about in this verse was that in order for us to self-actualize, in order for us to, as he says, return to the kingdom of heaven, which is self-realization, to know thyself, we must first return to that childlike state where we are curious and optimistic, and we take that leap of faith in the unknown and trust that everything is unfolding exactly as it's supposed to. If we look at the numerology of the card, the Fool is represented by the number 0. And 0 is a very important number for many reasons. One is that 0 represents the void, the fertile void. As I mentioned before, it's the unmanifest. So it really represents this idea of pure potential, infinite possibilities. 0 also, if you look at its shape, it's in a circular shape. And that circular shape represents the cyclical nature of life. And how I spoke earlier about every ending being a birth simultaneously. So from an eternal aspect, if we are to see ourselves as more than just a physical body having this human experience, and we connect to our soul, this eternal spark that all of us possess that carries on lifetime after lifetime, that eternal spark that lives within us is never ending. And so this idea of the circle, this circle of life that is never ending and always beginning simultaneously, that birth, death, rebirth cycle, that is very much present within the number 0. The number 0 also, if you look at its shape, is of an egg, right? It looks like an egg when we look at the number 0. And that egg shape can relate to the cosmic egg, which relates to the fertile void that births all possibilities. And so that is very symbolic of the number 0. Now let's look a little bit closer at the symbology within the card. And I'm going to talk about the Rider-Waite version of the card in this series, as you can see on the screen, which is probably the most famous tarot deck. Now the dog in the card, that's the first thing I want you to take a look at. Some people will say that the dog is warning the fool, hey, watch out, you're about to step off the cliff. But the way that I interpret the dog is that the dog representing this animalistic, instinctual part of the fool. Now the fool is really leading, as I said, from faith, with optimism, trusting in life. There is this childlike nature about the fool in taking this step forward. And the dog symbolizes that instinctual nature that we all have. Even, you might say, an intuitive nature where we're not necessarily listening to our logical mind, we're listening to our heart, to our instincts. I don't know if any of you have a pet or you've seen animals in the wild. Animals don't go to school to learn how to be an animal. They just know how to exist. And we humans, even though we do go to school, there is a part of us when we're babies, when we're children, that knows how to exist. We know how to breathe. We know how to feed from our mother. We know how to cry out when we need something from our parents. So there's this instinctual nature about all of us as humans, like animals, right? And that's what's represented with the dog in the tarot card. And I believe it's showcasing the fool's instinctual nature coming online, where it might not make logical sense as to where the fool is going, but the fool knows deep down, this is the right step. This is the right direction I need to move towards. This is the right leap into my future that's going to serve my highest good. Now, the next symbol I want you to look at is the white rose. The white rose represents innocence. It represents purity, and that reminds us of the childlike nature that I spoke about earlier. The small pack that the fool is carrying represents this idea of traveling light, that we don't need to carry all of our burdens with us, and often we do. If you think about what fear is, truly, when we're afraid to step forward, it's often because of our past baggage, our past fear that we're carrying into our present, that inhabits us from taking leaps forward, from taking a risk, from believing in our dreams. And that is why there is this idea of innocence and returning to children in this card, because it wants us to remember how it was to be a child when you thought the world had infinite possibilities, and you had this sense of optimism, which is represented by the sun in the card. We see so much yellow and this sun in the corner of the card, which represents the solar logos. It represents that primal life force that doesn't come from our conditioning, that doesn't come from school, which doesn't come from our logical mind. The primal life force that gives us life, that gives us energy, that comes from our creator. And that life force is directing the fool in the direction that it needs to head towards. Because what's interesting is the sun in the card is behind the fool. So it's not necessarily that the fool may even know that he's being guided by that life force energy within him. But as I mentioned before with the dog, he feels it. Instinctually, he feels something within him that's telling him to move in this direction, to trust in this idea, to trust in this path. Even though you can't see what's going to unfold as you take this step, that's the whole point of taking a leap of faith, is that we don't know what's on the other side. But the fact that we trust that maybe there is something beyond our wildest dreams on that other side. And that's very much what the cliff represents as well. The cliff is very symbolic within the Fool card, because the cliff represents taking a leap of faith, if you will, taking a risk. We don't know what's on the other side of the cliff in the tarot card. We can't see how far down the cliff actually is. Is it only 1 meter or is it 200 meters? We don't actually know. And that is often the case when we're taking a leap of faith. We don't know what's on the other side. So again, it comes back to this idea of trust, having trust in the unknown, within ourselves, within maybe a higher power. So let's talk about the astrology correspondence of the Fool card. The Fool is ruled by Uranus, the planet of sudden awakenings, of change, of lightning bolts of truth. Uranus is a planet which is very unique. It travels on its side. So it moves differently than all the rest of the planets. And Uranus loves to be different. Uranus loves to break free of convention. Uranus is a genius planet. It's usually ahead of its times. It's the ideas, its realizations are usually not understood by the masses. And the beautiful thing about Uranus energy is it doesn't need to be understood by the masses. It just needs to be understood by the individual. And that's very much true about this Fool card. It's an air card. It's the element of air. Okay? So it's very mental. Without going too esoteric, it relates to the first Hermetic principle of mentalism, that the all is mind and that the universe is mental. But I won't go too deep into that because we could be here all day. But essentially what I really want you to take away with this correspondence to Uranus is the fact that there is something non-conventional about the Fool. The Fool isn't here to fit in and make sense to the masses. It's really about following your own path and carving out a direction that feels true for you. One word that I really like associating with Uranus energy, and I'm someone who heavily associates with the Uranian energy. I have Uranus 3 degrees from my ascendant, so I'm very Uranian, and this really feels so true to me, and I hope that this lands within you, is that the word weird, if we take it back to its original definition in Old English, it derives from the word weird or wired, W-Y-R-D. And to be weird or wired, the original definition didn't mean that you were a black sheep or that you were different, haha, you're a weirdo. It meant that you were one with your destiny. You were one with fate. You actually didn't follow the crowd because you knew who you are and you knew what was your path. And rather than being a sheep like the rest of the herd, you carved out your own pathway and you followed that. And that's actually what made you weird, because you were actually in alignment. When everyone else wasn't in alignment, you were the one who was in alignment, and that's actually what made you weird. So I really like understanding Uranian energy through that lens, because the Uranian energy, it can seem like the black sheep. It can seem a bit unique in a way, a bit weird, if you will. But truly, the Uranian energy is that, because it's someone who is anchored into the truth of who they are, and they're not afraid to express that and to follow that truth and let that truth be their North Star in life. So what is the deeper spiritual lesson of the Fool card? The Fool teaches us how to trust in divine timing, to trust in life, to see life as our friend, and not something that we need to resist, that we need to be afraid of. I really love that quote. Fear and faith are two opposing forces, yet both demand the same thing: belief in the unseen. And so, my friends, when you reflect on this card, I want you to start pondering, where am I putting my belief? Am I putting it in faith or am I putting it in fear? Because both are invisible forces that we cannot see. But you get to choose where you want to put your attention. You get to choose where you want to put your life force. You get to choose how you want to lead your life. Do you want to make decisions from fear, or do you want to make decisions from faith? Because both, you cannot see the outcome, but both will lead you in very different pathways. And the Fool wants you to remember that you do have a higher intelligence that lives within you. Uranus is the higher mind, okay? It's the air elements. We're talking about mentalism. And it is that higher mind that can jolt us back into truth. What is that truth? That we are divine beings having a human experience. And from that lens, it's much easier to take those leaps of faith, to walk off the edge of the cliff, to trust that life is working out in our best interest. Why? Because we are innocent at our core. We all have an inner child. Yes, we've grown up into adults, most of us, but there still lives a child within us that is pure, that is innocent, that is represented by the white rose in the tarot. And that innocent child that lives within us, that pure desire, that anything is possible, that dreams are real, that I can create the life that I dream about, that is a possibility if I start to listen to the higher truth, not my logical mind that tells me I must conform, that I must meet societal needs, that I must follow what everyone else is doing, but rather to pivot onto my path of awakening, to meet myself at a deeper level, and to uncover all the mysteries of life, to see all the beauty that life has to offer. And it comes back to making that decision. Do I want to lead from faith or fear? That's what it comes back to. The Fool wants us to step outside of our comfort zone. The comfort zone is a beautiful place. It's the comfort zone. It feels comfortable. We enjoy living in our comfort zone, but nothing ever grows in our comfort zone. We don't evolve in our comfort zone. We don't actually meet all the potentials that exist within us, within our comfort zone. Finally, let's talk a little bit about the reversed meaning of the Fool. So of course, we can look at the Fool and we can say in its shadow form, it can be reckless behavior. It can be taking risks that we know are potentially life-threatening, where we know that we're doing something completely foolish, which might get us hurt or even killed. I think about people that are hoons on the road, driving, doing burnouts. There's this belief, particularly I think with young people that do this, where they feel invincible or it gives them an adrenaline rush. But there is a real danger in doing that, and it takes, potentially them having a car accident or someone else having a car accident that maybe they know to wake them up, to have that realization, what am I doing with my life? Why am I putting myself in danger and other people in danger? Also, another shadow version of the Fool is when we don't want to leave our comfort zone, when we know we've outgrown something and we don't want to end a situation, maybe a relationship, maybe a job that we know we've outgrown, and we know we have to take this leap of faith to step outside of something we feel comfortable in. Maybe it's even having a hard conversation. It doesn't need to be something major in our life. It can be, but it could also be just, like I said, having a hard conversation. We need to address something. And I really believe the shadow or reversed Fool could be us putting our blinders on. I don't want to acknowledge the truth. I want to stay ignorant. Ignorance is bliss. And that is another form of the reverse Fool, where we choose to ignore that instinctual nature where we know something isn't right, but we don't want to step outside our comfort zone. We don't want to change. We don't want to move. We don't want to trust that there could be a potential on the other side of this that could be so much more rewarding, so much more fulfilling, but instead we're choosing to live from fear. So it goes back to that, what are you choosing? Are you choosing to make decisions in your life based on fear or based on faith? But the beautiful thing about the reversed Fool is that there's actually medicine in the reverse Fool. So it's not bad. We have to get rid of this conception that there is good and bad. There is no good and bad. Anyone who's into the esoteric teachings knows that there is no such thing as good and bad. There's just polarity, and that even in the dark, even in the shadow, we can actually find light. We can actually extract truth. We can actually extract wisdom from that. So the medicine of the reverse Fool is awareness. It's admitting to our own foolishness. It's by becoming aware of, hey, you know what? There was that time in the past where I dated that person and I knew instinctually that that wasn't the right person for me. There were so many red flags, and I ignored my intuition. I ignored my instincts that told me, don't go here. This is bad news, but I didn't listen. And I acted like a fool because maybe I wanted love, or I thought that this person would give me love. I acted from insecurity, out of scarcity that I can't do better, out of unhealed wounds within me. And so this is the beautiful part of the tarot. It's not really about getting good cards or bad cards. It's really about introspection and going deeper within ourselves and illuminating parts of ourselves that we maybe haven't brought love to, or we need to bring healing to, or to bring awareness and integration so we can better come home to ourselves, so we can better understand ourselves and not keep repeating the same mistakes from our past. I don't even really like to use that word mistakes, because in our mistakes there is so much wisdom. How many times have you done something which appeared to be a mistake, but actually you learned something through that? And so from that perspective, there is no real wrong move you can take. If you really see life as your friend, if you really see it from a perspective where everything is unfolding exactly how it is, even if I take a misstep, even if I go left when I want to go right, or backwards when I want to go forwards, I'm still learning something in the process. And that is a very childlike way of living, where we don't judge good and bad, but we're rather just living in the moment, and we're just acting from curiosity. And from the experiences is how we gain wisdom, and we're better able to carve our path forward with all of that wisdom accumulated. Like, for example, maybe through dating so many different people that weren't the right person, not listening to my intuition, did it enable me to learn to stand in my power, to heal that aspect of myself, so that I could in future then start listening to my intuition to make better decisions in my dating life. It's sometimes through the polarity of the mistake or the shadow of a certain energy that we learn to extract the virtue or the gift from that situation. So the final thing I want to leave you with is a few journal prompts to go deeper on the full tarot card. So take a few minutes to grab your journal and write these down, or maybe even want to meditate on these questions. What does a leap of faith look like for you right now? What fears or anxieties are holding you back from taking a leap of faith? Describe a time in your life that you took a bold risk, and how did it change you? I recall a few years back, I made the decision to leave Dubai, where I was residing. I had a job as a flight attendant for many years, and I had this knowing in my heart that it was time to move back to Australia, to quit my job. But I didn't know what was on the other side of that. I didn't know if it was the right decision. And I remember pulling the Fool card at that time, and it really gave me confidence. I didn't see it as I was making a foolish mistake. I mean, there was only one way to find out, but I really saw it as the universe saying, I've got your back. And to have trust and to have faith and to take this leap, to jump, and the universe will catch you. I want you to take a minute to reflect on your life. When have you ever taken a leap of faith? And what was the outcome of that? And maybe you want to let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your insights or how this card has showed up for you in your life. So thank you for joining me in my first episode of the Conscious Tarot series. Please make sure to subscribe and like this video. I will be back shortly with the second episode, which will be on the Magician card. So I'm going to be moving through all 78 tarot cards and doing a deep dive like I've done today. And to really help you learn the tarot card through embodiment, because so many people come to me and they say, I can't memorize the deck. And the reason for that is because you're trying to memorize it from an intellectual level. You're trying to memorize what's being said in the book. But the best way, and this is my honest opinion, and this is what worked for me, the best way to learn the cards is to live them, to recognize them within your own psychology, to learn to embody these cards, to walk with them, to make them alive within your reality. And that's why I highly encourage you to download the Conscious Tarot Workbook, which is a free guide which includes a daily ritual and journal prompts for you to dive deeper into the cards. It also contains cheat sheets, so you have this guide to go back to in case you forget what the card means, and to really learn the cards for yourself, to deeply integrate their medicine within yourself. So I can't wait to see you in my next episode. If you've learned anything today, if you've had any aha moments, then leave it in the comments below. Share it with others, because that's how we learn. We learn not just through me speaking to you, but by you reflecting back to me what you've learned, or maybe something else that really struck you with the Fool. I would love to hear from you to keep the conversation going. So thank you for being here. I appreciate all of you for tuning in and listening to this. Please again subscribe and like this video if you found it helpful. And until my next episode, take care.